Hey everybody, this is Dr. Cersei with sort of a walkthrough of Death and the King's Horseman. I'm calling this little slide set, don't call it a clash of cultures. What I'll be doing is giving you some biographical background on Wole Soyinka, the author of the play, and then showing how I might go about writing a paper, say for instance a research paper about this particular play. So my initial quotation comes from the author's introduction to the play, where the author, Wole Soyinka, says, "The bane of themes of this genre is that they are no sooner employed creatively than they acquire the facile tag of clash of cultures, a prejudicial label which, quite apart from its frequent misapplication, presupposes a potential equality in every given situation of the alien culture and the indigenous on the actual soil of the latter." And his point, of course, is that we can't reduce this play to colonial Britain and native Yoruba culture. In fact, he's sort of interested in the more general human elements of dealing with death that transcend those cultural borders. And I'll tell you what I would focus on. It's a very interesting quotation to start with, especially given our research paper topic. So here's the biographical details about him. He was the first African to be awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1986. He was born in 1934, and this play, Death and the King's Horseman, came out in 1976. At that point, Soyinka was already in exile from Nigeria. So he's born in Nigeria. He is the son of a converted Christian mother and a school teacher father. And his grandfather is a Yoruba tribesman and elder. And so he has this sort of clash of cultures played out in his own life. Will he follow his mother or will he follow his grandfather? He eventually goes to England to study at the University of Leeds. He becomes a playwright, an author. He returns home in the 1960s, and immediately his literature, his plays, run afoul of the people in authority. He's a political author. He gets imprisoned, and in fact, at the end of the 1960s, he's put into solitary confinement for 22 consecutive months, and he leaves. This play, which comes out in 1976, is based on real events from Nigeria from the 1940s. He talks about that in the author's note, 1946, so 30 years earlier. He would have been alive at that point, 12 years old. And when the Nobel Prize Committee gave him the award in 1986, their announcement featured this statement about the play Death and the Knight's Horseman, the relationship between the born, unborn, the living, and the dead, to which Soyinka reverts several times in his works, is fashioned here with strong effect. So if I were doing a research paper, I might think about the ritual suicide that is essentially what's the main plot point with Elysian, right? So the question, does the play criticize or support the Yoruba practice of ritual suicide? That would be my question. And as I developed an answer to it, I would want to figure out whether I thought Soyinka in the end is supporting that practice and it's the British colonizers who get it wrong, or if he in fact is criticizing the British colonizers, but he's also criticizing the ritual of the Yoruba culture and showing the way in which it ends up with Olunde dead. It sacrifices the young. I mean, there's so many parallels, especially given the final line of the play. It made me think of the Diary of a Madman, Lu Xun, that we had just finished. The final line of the play is, "Now forget the dead, forget even the living, turn your mind only to the unborn." That's so reminiscent of the short stories we read just a couple weeks ago. So within the play, here's who I would focus on. I would have paragraphs that focused on these characters. Alison, of course, Olunde the son, Ialoja, who is the spokesperson for the women of the market, and then Pilkings, because, what I might do is I might set them in tension in various paragraphs, either in the same paragraph or in successive paragraphs. So is Alison's relationship to this cultural practice the same as Olunde's? How is it different? Is Ialoja's the same as Pilkings? How is it different? And of course, the beauty of drama is that it's built on dialogue, it's built on conversation. And so at the end of the play, what we get on stage are two bodies, Alison's and Olunde's, both there, both killed for different reasons, both suicides. And we get conversation. That final line from Ialoja is to Pilkings. And so the question is, what can putting those specific characters in conversation with each other analytically tell us about what Soyinka is trying to do? I think it's super important, for instance, that Ialoja gets the final say. Of course, Alison and Olunde can't say anything because they're dead. Finally, outside sources. So we have the author's note, Soyinka's introduction. The Norton Critical Edition of the play features a wonderful article called The Yoruba World, which comes from a book called Yoruba, 9 Centuries of African Art and Thought, and is a wonderful sort of one-stop shop for figuring out what the culture is like in real life before we start thinking about Soyinka's literary representation of it. And then a critical article called Wole Soyinka and the Myth of an African World, to me, is another really good resource that can sort of clarify what you think Soyinka is doing. And the point may be that Soyinka is acknowledging that this cultural practice has currency, it has purpose, it has meaning, but at the same time knows that the ultimate thing it sacrifices are children, that the British colonizers' foolhardiness is really pretending like those rituals don't do anything, that they're empty, that there's not some purpose that would require the British to replace it with some other kind of ritual. When we see them, all they do is dance, right? All they care about within the play is entertainment. And in fact, they're so not even skeptical, they're so nonchalant about the severity of death that they can wear death costumes and have it be not an encounter with death, but a sign of how naive they are. And Soyinka, I think, criticizes them more than he does the Yoruba tribe, but I do think in many ways the Yoruba tribe is held up for closer examination, and the fact that Olunde is dead at the end of the play is definitely an indictment of the culture. So that's what I've got. If you've got feedback or want to hear more about something, please let me know. I really hope this helps.